Alright, David Harry here. So, have you got an iPhone 15 Pro Max and have you been wondering to yourself, just how do I connect an XLR microphone like this one into my iPhone 15 Pro Max? Well, right now I am actually recording this microphone into my iPhone 15 Pro Max. So if I just go wide on this camera here, what we should be able to see now is the iPhone 15 Pro Max here, which is what I'm recording into. And obviously I'm just synchronizing like both of the recordings here. So when we're looking on that camera, we're listening to the audio of the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Right, what I'm going to do here is just refer to it as the iPhone. We know what it is now. Anyways, so what I'm going to do shortly is just to show you the physical setup here. But right now, this is just going to give you a really good demonstration of what the audio sounds like. And I stress the audio as well because I'm not entirely sure what the picture is going to be like on the iPhone. What it is, this setup that I've got here is just out of pure convenience. I don't even know which camera I'm looking to on the iPhone either. But what it is, this setup here is just basically purely for convenience, just to demonstrate the audio setup. So basically, my main camera there may not actually be focusing on me. I don't know. It might be focusing on the screen on the iPhone. And then as far as the iPhone is concerned, its picture is probably all over the place because I've not set it up properly. Anyway, it doesn't matter, what the pictures look like here because this is an audio demonstration. Now, just quickly before I do the overhead shot, let me see if I can lift this box up here. This is a USB audio interface, and I've just got to be careful so I do not disturb the cable from the box to the iPhone here. But let me just see if we can get an idea of what's going on here with this dial on the front, which is my record or input level to the audio interface. So just going to start pulling this backwards here, and we should notice that my voice starts getting lower and lower, and I'll just put it right to the bottom. Now what I'm going to do is bring the dial back up and obviously bring the recording input back up, and hopefully I remember roughly where it was before I moved it, because the last thing that I want to do here is to clip or distort anything here because it won't sound very good. Anyway, and so far what we should have heard is this microphone probably sounds quite decent going into the iPhone here. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is just flip one of the cameras over and I will show you the physical setup here and explain a few things, because obviously this is a dynamic microphone. However, I've got a condenser boom mic here, which I'll pull into shot in a second, and then have a go with that on the iPhone as well, just to show that we can actually use, any kind of microphone basically, as long as we have the right interface to connect the XLR cables into and stuff like that. So let me just flip the camera over and I will explain the physical setup here. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to show you here is the USB audio interface, and this is quite possibly the most important part of this type of setup. Now this one is a Behringer and it is a Euphoria UMC 202 HD. Now what's important about this particular audio interface is that this is what you call class compliant. Now a class compliant device just means that it doesn't require special software and drivers in order to operate it. So basically this just is essentially plug and play. Now you will have to use a class compliant device with the iPhone. Now there will be a whole bunch of things out there probably. However, I just know that this one works, and as you've heard so far in the video, it definitely works. Now this is just going to be the same as most of the audio interfaces. On the front here we've got a number of inputs. So these are XLR. It will also take 1/4-inch jack as well. Then here we've got our amplification or preamplification section. Now certain things like direct monitoring, like headphones and the output section here and stuff, these are not necessarily going to be that important for doing this type of thing of plugging a microphone straight into an iPhone. You could of course use this as the headphone outputs as well on the iPhone and stuff, and do a lot more with something like this other than what I'm doing with it. But just the basic functionality here is to use the XLR inputs. Now the other thing here as well, if I just flip around to the back, this one has got 48 volts phantom powering on. Now most of them will have that on anyway, but that's also important if you want to use condenser microphones, and I will give an example of that shortly. And also if you want to power things like inline preamplifiers, which is what I've actually been doing with that SM7B, I will show you that in a second. So like I say, basically on the front here, plug your microphones in, set your input levels here, and then what we do, we use this audio socket here to connect to the iPhone. So I will show you that in a second. But this socket here, whether this is on another device and it's USB-C or USB-A, the USB socket doesn't matter as long as you've got a cable to go from that socket to the USB-C input on the iPhone. Now this particular socket here, I can't quite remember which version of USB this is. I don't know if I'm not even going to hazard a guess what it is. It's basically the printer port USB type socket. I should really know these things. Okay, so this is the cable that I'm using, and hopefully these ends are in focus here. As we can see, on one end it is USB-C, which is what we use to plug into the iPhone, and then on this end, this is that, like, you know, printer port socket for USB. I really must learn to remember what these things are called, but basically it's just one of those cables that you use to connect to USB-C to like a USB printer and stuff. And essentially all you do here is just plug this end of the cable into, like, you know, the port on the USB audio interface. So we just pop that into there, and then just plug the USB-C end of the cable obviously into the iPhone like that. And then once the cable is plugged into the iPhone, we will see here we get a power indicator on the USB audio interface. This has also got the indicator switched on there for the 48 volts phantom power, because I've got that switched on the back. So essentially that is the basic setup there. Now as far as the microphones are concerned, we can essentially use near enough any type of XLR microphone to plug into this USB audio interface. Now just as an example of the connections here, this is one of my condenser mics. As you can see on the end here, that's got an XLR on it. So I've got an XLR cable here, so I just take the one end of the XLR cable there that fits into the microphone, just pop that into there like that, and then simply just plug the other end of the cable into one of the ports here on the actual USB audio interface. So let me just pop that in there. So that there now is the setup for the microphone into the USB audio interface, which in turn is plugged into the iPhone. Now, like I said before, there was something else that I'd already used so far in this video, so let me just try and find it. Okay, so what I've got here then is a Triton Fethead, and this is what you call an inline preamplifier. So what this does is just add a bit more extra gain to, say, microphones like the Shure SM7B, which I've just been using, which has got a very weak output, because what happens if you plug something like a 7B directly into here, you're going to find that you're having to put loads of gain up here in order to preamplify the microphone. Now the more gain you put up, or the closer you get to like the maximum, you could start bringing noise into it. So with something like the Fethead here, what you would do is just pop that into the mic input like that, and then you then just plug the XLR into there, and then the other end of the XLR gets plugged into something like the SM7B, which, like I say, it's a weak microphone as far as its output is concerned, in which case what will happen is the SM7B will be kind of pre-amplified before it hits the actual input here, and then this pre-amplification kind of basically just gives it, like, you know, a less noisy input, as it were, and then that just allows it then to back off the input level there on the preamp or the audio interface, basically so that we've got manageable noise levels with certain microphones, like certain dynamics like the SM7B. Now once everything is all set up, the next thing to then do is to just set your recording levels on whatever software you're using. Now I'll just give you a very brief overview here of the Blackmagic Camera App here. Now of course there are a ton of other ways of like recording video on an iPhone, or even just audio only. Now I'll just give you a general overview for this particular app, but this is going to be quite similar to most other things. Anyway, so if I come to the Blackmagic app here, hopefully I can get focus. You're going to focus. Okay, hopefully that is in focus. What it is, I can't do manual focus because my hands are moving about and stuff, so unfortunately no critical focus here, I'm sorry. But what I'm going to do now is just go into settings, and then what I'm going to do is go to audio. Then within audio, I've got a number of options here, but the most basic option will be the audio source. So I'm going to tap on there. Then I'm going to select my audio interface here, which obviously it's come up and saying UMC202HD. So I'm just going to tap on that, and then I will go back to, say, the camera there. So now what's happening is the audio interface is now directing this microphone into the app. So if I just scratch on the mic here, and if we have a look at this level here, as we can see, that's the level. Now just quickly, as far as setting levels are concerned, what I would strongly recommend is, and I can't tell you what settings you should use, but I'll tell you how to do it because different microphones have different gain requirements. What you need to do is set the input level to be the best possible input level you can find here. So what you do, you're talking to your microphone and stuff, and then you just kind of like, twiddle this around until you've got your optimum level here. So just get a good signal level here. Don't allow it to clip, and then that's your level set on the input, and that will definitely be the best place to set the level. And then what you do, you come into the app here, and then let me see if I can get focus again. If I tap on the meters there, as we will see, we've got this thing here that says audio gain. Now what we need to do, once the audio level's been set for the microphone on the audio interface, do your final setting here, which might probably require pulling the fader down there, as it were, and then use that then as your final record level. Now we can't go into any more detail about these things because these things do vary and change from app to app, and also as well with the likes of, say, the standard iPhone app for the camera, I don't think that's got any kind of alterations for like gain and stuff like that, or if it has, I've never seen it. So in that instance, if you're using something that doesn't have any manual control of the gain level, you will have to do all of it from there anyways. Okay, so like I said, that's like the most basic way of like explaining this setup, and it will vary depending upon the apps being used, whether that be like a video app or even an audio app, and it'll also change depending upon what audio interface you are using due to the types of gain structures that it will have on it. Okay, so I am now onto a condenser microphone, which is this one here. Hold on, you should be able to hear that. Now the thing with this particular microphone, this requires phantom power. Now because it requires phantom power, that power's got to come from somewhere, so it obviously comes from the USB audio interface here. So what's very interesting as far as I'm concerned is that the iPhone 15 Pro Max, although this does have problems powering certain like SSDs because it doesn't have enough current inside its power in order to drive certain SSDs, it's got enough current in its power to not only power the audio interface but to also be sending out the phantom power and stuff. Now just thinking about it, what's this? This is the SM7B that I was on before. Now whilst this is a dynamic microphone, this was using the Triton Fethead, and this is an inline preamplifier which basically gains up this microphone with a lot of clean gain before you put it into your final like preamp or like USB audio interface. Now this does require phantom power as well to work, so obviously I was using phantom power before. Now outside of the phantom powering thing, if you just plug a straight dynamic into like any kind of preamp or any audio interface like this one, you can use a dynamic anyways. It just means that you would usually have to have a lot more gain. This is going to fall. It just means that you would normally have to have a lot more gain, and it may become a bit noisy and stuff like that. Hence why the inline preamplifier with the 7B there. Anyways, this particular mic, I'm going to leave it in this position as I'm talking, but this could just be boomed in over the top, which is what I sometimes do, or I get it close to me like this if I'm not bothered about the microphone being in the shot. But nonetheless, this is going to give us an example for the iPhone here of using a decent quality condenser microphone via the USB audio interface, and of course this is XLR phantom powered into the USB audio interface, then into the iPhone. Okay, now just to finish this off, I'm gonna just give you a bit of a mad scenario here with this microphone, which you might find a bit funny but is very useful. Okay, so to my last example here, and what I've done is to strap an XLR condenser microphone to my head. Now Don't start laughing and don't think that I've totally lost the plot. This is actually the way I do a lot of my voiceovers, so stuff where I am not on camera. Just quickly about this particular setup and position. The reason why I do this is so that I can kind of move around a little bit, especially when I'm doing stuff like this where I'm doing product shots on the table and I might need to move about a little bit. Now if I had a microphone boomed in on the top, as I'm moving around, that microphone stays still up there whilst my head is moving. However, this microphone has got a permanent distance to my mouth, so no matter where I move, it's definitely going to be picking my voice up, hence why I use this for doing VO. So whilst it does look crazy, it is actually really useful. Anyways, so what I'm doing here obviously is still recording into the iPhone via the audio interface and stuff like that, but now I can do product shots on the table here and have this really dead nice clean dialogue on the go, or hopefully it's really clean. So let me just practice something here. Oh, bear in mind, I've never done this before with an iPhone. In fact, I've never used an iPhone properly on a table like this, shooting anything. So again, the picture's probably all over the place. Anyway, so as we can see here, I have got 3 boxes on the table. Let's have a look at that middle box. Okay, look at that. It's got a picture of a Beetle on the front, and this is the SK Hynix Beetle X31 SSD, which is a 1TB SSD, and this is actually a really good SSD for the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Actually, on that point, I've just done a couple of videos actually with this particular SSD to do a bunch of stuff with the iPhone, recording video to it and stuff, and also just using it as a general storage device. Check out those videos. That's a fantastic SSD. It's awesome. Anyways, like I say, this position here is just maybe gives people an idea of something else that they can do to get audio into the iPhone, and then do these things here where you're doing product shots on a table and stuff like that. Anyways, this video's probably dragged on loads and stuff like that, and quite often I don't know when to shut me trap, but I've got to go now because I think it's 10 to 6 or something as I'm doing this, so that's 10 more minutes until Samsung do their unveil for the new S24 Ultra, which I will be ordering and buying today. So if you're into the S24 Ultra and stuff like that, if you want to know a bit about that, keep an eye on the channel because I'm going to be doing a bunch of stuff with that phone. I'll do some comparisons with the iPhone and things like that. Anywho, there will be some links in the video description below to some of the stuff that I've used, although as you've seen here, you can kind of mix and match a whole bunch of stuff here, so you don't have to take my recommendations for particular things. Just use the workflow that I've gotten here as something to give you an idea of what you could do. But like I say, there'll be some links and whatnot, and if you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and a sub to the channel would be absolutely awesome. I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.